this part topic is on Ayin Hara, often translated as the evil eye, is a central concept in Jewish mysticism and tradition. It refers to the destructive spiritual force unleashed when someone looks at another with envy, resentment, or ill will. Far from being mere superstition, it is treated seriously in the Talmud, Kabbalah, and halakhic discussions. The core meanings of spiritual energy, according to Kabbalah, human consciousness projects energy through the eyes, and a jealous gaze can puncture another's spiritual aura, leaving them vulnerable to misfortune. Next is heavenly judgment. The Zohar teaches that Ayin Hara triggers divine re-evaluation of a person's merits. If arrogance or ingratitude is present, blessings may be withdrawn. And cultural instinct. Even rationalist Jews instinctively deflect praise with phrases like Kena Hora, no evil eye, showing how deeply embedded the belief is. Article on ajudeka.com. So the evil eye, Ayin Hara, in Kabbalah, the meaning, signs, and protection. Across nearly every culture in the world, there's a belief in the destructive power of a jealous gaze. However, in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, the evil eye, known in Hebrew as Ayin Hara, is not merely a folk superstition. It is a profound spiritual concept with real-world consequences, detailing how human consciousness, envy, and negative energy can physically impact our lives. If you have ever felt a sudden streak of bad luck after sharing good news, or felt drained after being around a resentful person, you may have brushed up against the Ayin Hara. In this guide, we will explore exactly what the evil eye is according to Kabbalah, how it works, and most importantly, how to protect yourself and your loved ones. What is the evil eye? Ayin Hara. In short, the Ayin Hara is negative spiritual energy created by the jealousy, envy, or ill will of others, according to Kabbalah. When someone looks at your success, relationships, or wealth with a resentful eye, their negative thoughts create a spiritual prosecution against you in the heavenly realms, which can manifest as bad luck, illness, or loss in the physical world. The mechanics of the evil eye, how does it work? To understand how a simple glance can cause harm, we have to look at how Kabbalah views human thought and energy. The Zohar teaches that our eyes are not just windows into the soul, they are projectors of the soul's energy. When a person looks at something with intense desire or jealousy, they project a beam of negative, lacking energy. If you are the target of that jealousy, this energy can puncture your spiritual aura, your protective shield. The concept of heavenly judgment. Kabbalistically, the evil eye triggers a process of divine judgment. When someone is jealous of your new car, your happy marriage, or your success, it generally asks the universe a dangerous question: why does this person deserve such blessings when I do not? If you have been arrogant, boastful, or ungrateful for those blessings, the heavenly response might be to remove them, leaving you vulnerable to the negative effects of the Ayin Hara. So myth versus reality, the truth about the evil eye. Because the evil eye is discussed globally, it is surrounded by misconceptions. Here is the Kabbalistic reality for clarity. So the myth that only witches or evil people can cast the evil eye, which is false. The reality is anyone can accidentally cast the evil eye, even a friend or family member, simply by feeling a fleeting moment of deep jealousy or resentment towards your success. another myth. It's just an outdated Middle Eastern superstition. So false. The reality is the Ayin Hara is deeply rooted in authoritative Jewish texts, including the Talmud and the Zohar. Great sages took it very serious as a metaphysical reality. And the myth that you need magic spells to cure it, which is false. The reality is Kabbalah rejects magic. Protection comes from authentic spiritual tools like the red string or hamsa, prayer, and most importantly, living a life of humility and charity. So signs you might be affected by the evil eye. While we should not become paranoid and blame every minor inconvenience on the Ayin Hara, Kabbalists note several signs that might indicate a vulnerability to negative energy. A sudden unexplained string of bad luck or financial loss immediately following a major success or public announcements. Unexplained physical exhaustion, headaches, or heavy feeling when interacting with certain people. Sudden uncharacteristic arguments or tension in a previously peaceful relationship or home. How to protect yourself. Kabbalistic remedies. Fortunately, Kabbalah provides powerful tools to shield yourself from the evil eye. The goal is to build a spiritual firewall around your blessings. The power of humility. Living under the radar. The absolute best defense against the evil eye is modesty. The Talmud teaches blessing is only found in things hidden from the eye. You do not need to hide your joy, but avoid unnecessary boasting or flaunting your wealth and success on social media. What people cannot see, they cannot be jealous of. And the phrase, Bli Ayin Hara. It is a widespread Jewish custom to say Bli Ayin Hara, meaning without the evil eye, or the Yiddish equivalent Kin Ayina Hara, Kin Nahora, when speaking about one's children, success, or good fortune, and acts as an energetic disclaimer warding off jealousy. Spiritual tools and amulets. For centuries, physical reminders and spiritual tools have been used to deflect negative energy. The red string worn on the left wrist to block negative receiving energy. Learn how to use it in our red string guide. And the hamsa, the ancient hand-shaped symbol often containing an eye in the center, designed to stare back and deflect malicious gazes. And the Ben Porat prayer, a traditional prayer invoking the protective energy of the biblical Joseph, who was completely immune to the evil eye. Building your spiritual shield. Understanding the Ayin Hara is not meant to cause fear. It is meant to empower you. By living with humility, gratitude, and awareness, you can ensure your blessings remain secure. However, sometimes we need extra physical and spiritual reinforcement. From the famous hamsa to ancient silver pendants, authentic Kabbalistic tools have been trusted for centuries to maintain a protected home and aura. Curious about how these tools actually work? Continue to our guide, Kabbalah amulets and Sigilot. Next article on Chabad.org. What is the evil eye? In Judaism, the evil eye, Ayin Hara in Hebrew, is the harmful negative energy that is created when one looks at something with envy or ill feeling. The idea of an Ayin Hara is found in many places in the Talmud and Jewish law. For example, we are told not to gaze at a fellow's field of standing grain, lest we damage it with an evil eye. And the custom is not to call two brothers, or father and son, up to the Torah consecutively because of the Ayin Hara that may come from drawing too much attention to a single family. The evil eye is also the reason why we don't count people. However, before we start fearing every possible Ayin Hara, it's important to know how, why, and when the evil eye works. So which eye is the evil eye? The concept of an Ayin Hara is related to the prohibition, do not covet, in the Ten Commandments. Some medieval sages explained that an Ayin Hara is a sort of physical phenomenon in which negative energy emanates from the person's eyes when he gazes upon something or someone with ill feeling or envy. However, the second Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Dovber Shnuri, explained that you cannot say that the eye referenced here is the physical eye, for what power does such an organ, which has no intelligence, have to cause good or evil? Rather, the evil eye refers to a spiritual vision of the intellect, the eye of the mind. So why the evil eye works? Many have questioned how it is possible that one person's negative gaze and thoughts can cause harm to another. The key is that it is not the evil eye on its own that causes the negative effects. And here's how it works. God is the epitome of kindness. As such, heaven does not generally judge a person in the strictest possible manner, but when one negatively gazes at another good fortune, with ill feelings of or envy, he is essentially asking how come that person has XYZ. This arouses the latent harsh judgment above, and the person is judged strictly according to what he deserves. So if there is already some sort of existing sin, the evil eye can amplify it and cause the person to be judged in a strict and unfavorable fashion. So to put it differently, when the heavenly court weighs the sins and merits of a person, both good and bad judgment results. When we note and speak of the good, we channel the good, and when someone views the other negatively, he channels the negative. Based on this, we can understand why the sages tell us that an Ayin Hara also negatively affects the person who gazes with an evil eye, since the harsh judgment and scrutiny is visited upon them both. Warding off the evil eye. When you praise a person, his family, or belongings, you can avoid giving the evil eye by indicating that you bear no jealousy towards them, and even bless them, that an evil eye should have no power over them. In Hebrew, this is commonly done by inserting the phrase Bli Ayin Hara, which means without evil eye. In Yiddish, this is said as Kein Ayin Hara, which is often contracted to sound like Kin Aina Hora or Kinahora. Traditionally, some use various amulets and remedies as a way to ward off the evil eye, but that deserves an article of its own. However, since the evil eye is generated by people gazing enviously and with ill feeling, it is best avoided by acting in a modest manner, not flaunting wealth or other gifts, as the sages tells us. Blessing only rests on that which is hidden from the eye. Why you need not worry about the evil eye. Although the Talmud does lend a measure of credence to the evil eye, it also tells us that one who is not troubled by it will not be troubled by it. Don't be bothered by it, and it will not bother you. As Rabbi Endobfer, the Majid of Metzrit, taught, in truth, everything is considered as not before God, and there is no true independent existence outside of God. Thus, when you look at something in a positive way, you are also seeing and recognizing how it comes from God. And since God is the source of all blessings, by doing so you bring forth even more blessing. However, when you gaze upon something with an evil eye, even when you praise it but don't truly recognize that all is from God, you are essentially presenting it as if it is an entity of its own, separating it from its divine source and the spiritual vitality within it, and therefore causing a loss of blessing. Of course, the reverse is also true. If one can have a negative impact just by gazing at something with ill feelings, imagine what one can accomplish by making an effort to always regard things with positivity. Let's make sure to view our blessings and the blessings of others with a kind of grateful eye. And next article. This is barmitzvah.com. The evil eye, Ayin Hara, in Jewish tradition. So the evil eye, Ayin Hara, is one of the oldest and most persistent beliefs in Jewish tradition, from Talmudic sources and protective practices like the red string Hamsa and spitting 3 times to modern rationalist debates. So the evil eye, Ayin Hara. So the gaze that harms. You have probably done it without thinking. Someone compliments your child, "What a beautiful baby," and you feel a reflexive urge to deflect. "Oh, she's in trouble, trust me." Or someone asks how business is going, and you knock on wood before answering. Or you say something good and immediately add, almost involuntarily, Kinahora. This is the Ayin Hara, the evil eye, at work, not as a metaphysical force, though some believe it is exactly that. But as a cultural instinct so deeply embedded in Jewish life that it persists even among people who consider themselves thoroughly rational and entirely modern. The belief that a jealous or admiring gaze can cause harm is one of the oldest ideas in human civilization. It appears in ancient Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, and the Islamic world, and across Africa and Asia. But in Jewish tradition, the evil eye is not merely folk superstition, it has a textual pedigree. The Talmud discusses it seriously. The Kabbalah elaborates on it extensively, and the practices designed to protect against it remain alive in Jewish communities worldwide. Talmudic sources. The Talmud does not treat the evil eye as superstition, it treats it as fact. In Bava Metzia 107b, Rabbi Yochanan states that 99 out of 100 deaths are caused by the evil eye, a dramatic claim that places Ayin Hara alongside disease and violence as a leading cause of mortality. Whether this is meant literally or hyperbolically, it establishes the evil eye as a serious concern in rabbinic thought. The Talmud in Barakot 20a records that the descendants of Joseph are immune to the evil eye based on the blessing Jacob gave Joseph, a fruitful vine by a spring. The spring waters, which are hidden from view, cannot be affected by an evil gaze. This passage implies that visibility is part of the danger. What is seen can be harmed by seeing. In Barakot 55b, the Talmud advises that a person who enters a city and fears the evil eye should hold his right thumb in his left hand and his left thumb in his right hand and say, "I, so-and-so, am a descendant of Joseph, over whom the evil eye has no power." Practical advice from the sages, as specific as a recipe. So what is the evil eye? The evil eye is not a Jewish understanding, a curse deliberately cast by a sorcerer. It is something more subtle and more common, the harmful energy generated by envy. When someone looks at another person's success, beauty, health, or good fortune with jealousy, even unconsciously, that negative energy can cause damage. This is why the danger is greatest when things are going well. You are the most vulnerable to Ayin Hara when you are most visible, most successful, most blessed. Flaunting wealth, bragging about children, or displaying happiness too openly invites the envious gaze. Not necessarily from malicious people, but from anyone whose own situation makes them vulnerable to jealousy. The Kabbalistic understanding deepens this further. In Lurianic Kabbalah, the evil eye is connected to the Sitra Achra, the other side, the realm of negative spiritual energy. Envy creates a spiritual opening through which negative forces can enter. Protection against the evil eye is therefore not superstition, but spiritual hygiene. Protection methods. Jewish tradition offers a remarkable variety of protective practices. Saying Kinahora, the most common protection is verbal, adding a Kin Ayin Hara, no evil eye, after any positive statement. The baby is sleeping through the night, Kinahora. Business is good, Kinahora. The formula is so automatic that many Jews say it without consciously registering what it means. Spitting 3 times, saying patu patu patu, or actually spitting slightly after receiving a compliment or hearing good news. The practice may derive from the belief that saliva has protective power, or it may simply be a gesture of deflection, rejecting the evil eye by mimicking contempt. The hamsa, the hand-shaped amulet with an eye in the palm, is one of the most recognizable symbols of evil eye protection. Common in Sephardi and Mizrahi communities, the hamsa is hung in homes, worn as jewelry, and placed in cars. The name comes from the Arabic word 5, referring to the 5 fingers. The red string, wearing a red string on the left wrist, traditionally sourced from Rachel's tomb, is believed to absorb negative energy. This practice gained enormous visibility through the Kabbalah Center and celebrity adoption in the early 2000s. Deflecting compliments, the traditional reluctance to accept compliments about children, responding to "what a beautiful baby" with a dismissive comment, is a form of evil eye protection. By downplaying the positive, you reduce the target for envy. Red strings and hamsa pendants. Okay, so the rationalist objection: not all Jewish authorities accept the evil eye. Maimonides, the great rationalist, was skeptical of folk beliefs and amulets, arguing that they bordered on idolatry. His approach emphasized reason, medicine, and natural law over supernatural protections. Other rationalist thinkers have interpreted Ayin Hara psychologically rather than metaphysically. The harm of the evil eye is really the social damage caused by envy itself, broken relationships, resentment, community friction. On this reading, the protective practices are not magical, they are social wisdom, ways of managing envy by practicing humility and discretion. And this debate between folk belief and rational theology is itself deeply Jewish. The tradition contains multitudes. It holds space for the grandmother who spits 3 times after complimenting a baby and the philosopher who considers such behavior superstitions. Both are part of the conversation. In modern practice, today the evil eye occupies a curious space in Jewish life. Most educated modern Jews do not literally believe that an envious gaze can cause a child to fall ill or a business to fail, and yet many of the same people instinctively say Kinahora, hang a hamsa in their kitchen, or feel a twinge of anxiety when someone compliments their good fortune too effusively. So this is not hypocrisy, that it is cultural memory. The practices surrounding the evil eye carry the accumulated wisdom of generations. The understanding that envy is real, that visibility creates vulnerability, that humility is a form of protection, and that the things we love most are the things we most fear losing. We do not need to believe in the literal evil eye to appreciate its underlying insight. Be grateful quietly, celebrate without flaunting, protect what matters by not making it a target. In a world of social media and conspicuous consumption, the old rabbi's advice has never been more relevant. Kinahora. In classical sources, the Talmud references Rabbi Yochanan claimed that 99 out of 100 deaths are caused by Ayin Hara in Baba Metzia 107b. The descendants of Joseph are said to be immune, as his blessings were hidden from view. Halakhic rulings. Rambam and later authorities debated whether fences must be built high enough to prevent harmful gazes into neighbors' fields, showing Ayin Hara's practical legal implications. JewishWeekly.com, article on Ayin Hara, the evil eye. On Daf 107a, Rav is quoted as saying that it is forbidden for a person to stand at his neighbor's field when the field is filled with ripened produce. Rashi explains that by casting an evil eye, Ayin Hara, on the field, one can cause it to suffer a loss. This follows the teaching that it is inadvisable to build a field near a town where people constantly walk by, and there is the increased possibility of people looking at this field with an Ayin Hara. The Gemara portrays Ayin Hara as a form of metaphysical power, analogs to a physical force that can cause damage. The laws of damage by neighbors are discussed as the beginning of Bava Basra, where a separating fence 4 amos high is required between neighboring yards to prevent invasion of the neighbor's privacy. If it is forbidden to look at a neighbor's produce, is a high wall required to prevent looking in. High or low wall. Rambam Hilkos Shekanim 216 writes that whilst the fence between courtyards must be 4 amos high, the wall between vegetable gardens is only required to be 10 tefakim high. Ravad disagrees and insists on a high wall for both situations. Besides Ravad, other Rishonim also disagree and require a high wall for gardens as well, on the basis that gazing causes damage. If one is not supposed to see over the fence, how could a low fence of 10 tefakim be effective? And this question was posed to Rambam Teshuvos Vlau 395 in his lifetime, and he replied that the prohibition in our Gemara is only midas chassidus, and therefore demarcation is sufficient. Shulchan Aruch appears to paskin for a low wall like Rambam, although the high wall view is noted as secondary alternative. On the other hand, CM 378.5 rules that one may not gaze at one's neighbor's field without mention of midas chassidus, and that should require a high partition. Sima answers that privacy damage where the neighbor watching impedes his normal use of the yard relates to conflicts of interest between neighbors which belong to Hilkos Shekanim, but our balaka is brought in Hilkos Nezikin, which concerns damage by a mazik, where demarcation to prevent infringement of property rights is sufficient. Some suggest that Khazal would not demand a high wall for the short period when produce is standing fully ripened. Liability for damage. The question arises whether there would be any liability for damage caused in a non-natural manner. Our Gemara is silent on this point. The earliest source in this regard is a question presented to Rabbi Shagiz, Helikos Ketanos 298, where he was asked about criminal culpability if someone kills with a name or sorcery. In an extremely brief teshuvah, he responds that perhaps since through his word he has performed an act, his status is comparable to a person who kills by shooting an arrow, of whom the prophet said, "Their tongue is a sharpened arrow." And Yirmiyahu 9:7. Keda Divash Lepi Mem 5 emphasizes that employment of a divine name involves a freely willed human act and should therefore be ascribed to that person. Keda addresses the problem that there are numerous Talmudic anecdotes concerning Chachamim who casts their eyes upon wrongdoers, who become a heap of bones, yet there is no indication of censure of these to Tzaddikim. Keda asserts that their intention was to withdraw the spark of Keshuda within that person, and that left him being a heap of bones. Perhaps his meaning is that a body without its inert Kedusha is no more than a heap of bones, a body without proper life. Similarly, Aruk Hashulkin, CM 378-1 rules that such claims are not actionable in Beis-Din, but there would be heavenly liability. Ayin Hara cannot be viewed as a direct physical act, so at best it would be Garama, which only carries heavenly liability. How does Ayin Hara work? Maharal understands Ayin Hara to be a destructive power inherent in nature. It is a spiritual rather than physical force, where celestial attention is drawn to the good fortune of the object of the Ayin Hara and prompts a heavenly view of that individual's standing to determine whether he is actually deserving of a good fortune. Kazan Ish, chosen Mishpat, Lukatim 21 asserts that one of the forces embedded in creation is that a person's thoughts can affect changes even in solid, physical things. When people are perplexed or astonished at something exceptionally successful, that good fortune is in danger of attack. However, everything is fixed from heaven, and if it was not so preordained, it cannot be caused by someone's Ayin Hara. Heavenly decrees can be triggered in different ways, and if Ayin Hara causes revelation of someone's shortcomings, that may activate a reduction in his entitlement. The Stepler quotes the above Kira and asserts that the Tzadikim were not regarded as culpable, as they simply confirmed the wrongdoer's true status as being without Kedusha. However, Kelos Yaakov agrees with Halakos Katanos that intentionally invoking a supernatural force in order to kill another individual would be a criminal offense. However, but there would be great difficulty in providing Beis-Din with hard evidence that he was directly responsible for death, so liability could not be imposed. And Rabbi Dessler, in Miktav Mi Eliyahu 3, P 3:13 and 4P5, suggests that the mechanisms through which Ayin Hara works is an ethical one. The blessings bestowed by Hashem upon an individual should not serve as a source of anguish to others. If one allows his wealth, children, etc. to cause pain to others less fortunate, and certainly one who flaunts his bounty arouses a divine judgment against himself and a reevaluation of whether he deserves those blessings. Simcha celebrations. We find many halakos relating to Ayin Hara in connection with Simkos. It is a mitzvah for all to join in celebration of a bris or wedding, but at the same time this could cause pain to others who are less fortunate and are without children or a shidduch. Two family members should not have alios, consequently names should not be duplicated within the family, and two brothers should not marry two sisters. In Sefer Chassidim 477, all because of attracting attention to extraordinary situations which can generate Ayin Hara thoughts. Rabbi Yochanan Lurie, writing in Meshivas Nefesh Noach more than 5,000 years ago, states that it is inevitable that some people may feel their personal lack of good fortune at a wedding, and to counter any Ayin Hara, they respond Amen to the blessings and wish Mazel Tov to demonstrate their belief that everyone receives what he deserves in his own time. Beginning and ending with Nun, there is an interesting tefillah often included at the end of Zemros for Motzi Shabbos, where one recites 11 Pesukim, each of which begins and ends with Nun, which is headed with a note that it is beneficial against Ayin Hara. Rabbanu Bakya Bamindar 3232 writes that he has a tradition that the Shem HaMeforesh of 13 letters emanates from these Pesukim, and their recital is a protection. It is interesting to note that this list is found in the printed Mezra Gedola on Vayikra 13:9. But it has its origin in the earliest Mazor work, Asher manuscripts such as Codex Cairo, or what was I reading? It is last written in the Hale-Akla manuscript as illustrated, but it is not in the Paris manuscript which was used for the printed edition. But it is also found as marginal notes in ancient Ben Asher manuscripts such as Codex Cairo, Yirmiyahu 58, and Leningrad Vayikra 13:9, which are over 1,000 years old. The sword generally controls the spelling of words, and this list of Pesukim does that because words were modified so that they started with none. The second pasuk starts with the word something, which should really read something, but the aleph has been dropped to ensure that the pasuk starts with none. Possibly the connection with Ayin Hara is something similar to the use of a part of inverted nunin at, acting as a form of brackets by enclosing each pasuk with brackets in the form of initial and final nunin. The pasuk is concealed and protected from Ayin Hara vision. Furthermore, Baba Basra 118b explains why fish in Hebrew equals none. Are a siman baraka because they are covered in the sea and are not looked at. Rokich points out that these 11 Pesukim contains no Semic, symbolizing anti-satanic protection. And Tikkun Lil Shavos. The sequence of the Pesukim in the Zemaros is different from Akla. In Mizora, the order of quotations will either have the sequence of the 24 books stipulated in Baba Basra 14b, or that followed in our Tenakim according to the chronological order of authors. Interestingly, the order of the reader of Sepharim are as printed in Tikkun Vil Shavos is again different. And the Chabad interpretation, Rabbi Dovber Snuri explained that Ayin Hara is not the physical eye but the mind of the eye, a spiritual vision that channels judgments. Chiropractor practices the Hamsa amulets, hand-shaped charms with an eye symbol widely used in Jewish and Middle Eastern cultures, and the red string, often worn on the wrist, especially in Kabbalistic circles to ward off envy, and verbal deflection, saying Bli Ayin Hara without the evil eye when mentioning success, and then hidden blessings, avoiding ostentation and keeping prosperity discreet to reduce jealousy. And scholars outlined 4 main ways to understand Ayin Hara. Metaphysical force. The metaphysical force, a destructive energy protected by the eyes. And divine reanalysis, jealousy triggers heavenly scrutiny. And social warning, a caution against flaunting wealth or success. And psychological effect, the harm of living under others' negativity. RabbiManny.com, Halachic and Hashkafic issues in contemporary society. So 134, Ayin Hara, Part 1. Ayin Hara, the evil eye, is a well-known Jewish concept with firm roots in classic Torah sources. But what is it and how does it work? Important questions which arise and we will deal with in these shurim are: is it rational or mystical? Are we required to be concerned about it? Are there certain behaviors that attract or avoid it? Is there a way to remove it? And we will see that there are at least 4 approaches to understanding Ayin Hara: as a destructive metaphysical force which emanated from the eyes of certain people, as a heavenly reanalysis of a person's merit caused by the jealousy of others, as a warning against a lifestyle of showiness which caused jealousy in others, as a psychological reaction against the negativity and judgment of others. And Torah sources, there's no explicit references in the Torah to the Ayin Hara in the mystical sense. In the Chumash, evil eye is always a reference to mean behavior. The first oblique reference in Chumash to the concept of evil and the eye is where Abraham feels that expelling Ishmael is the wrong thing to do. In the context of those who refuse to lend before Shemitah year, since a loan will be cancelled, the expression Ayin clearly means mean and ungenerous. And next, so too in the Takaka, the evil of the eye is a begrudging and stingy attitude. In Mishlei, the Rai Ayin is the miser who is unhappy when others eat his food and gives only grudgingly. Castle's reading of Ayin Hara in Chumash. The Chumash states that the Jewish people must not be counted directly, otherwise this would cause damage to them. Rashi brings the explanation that the damage would be caused by Ayin Hara resulting from the counting, as we see in the census taken by David. And then Castle learned that one may not count Jews even for a mitzvah. Rashi quotes Castle, who understand that Sarah placed an Ayin Hara on Hagar and she lost her first pregnancy. Sarah also put an Ayin Hara on Ishmael, which made him sick, requiring Hagar to carry him. And Castle understood that Yaakov was worried about Ayin Hara when all the brothers went together to Egypt. And Talmudic sources, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot lists Ayin Tova as one of the traits of Abraham, and by contrast, Ayin Hara as one of the traits of Bilam, who seeks only to curse others. Next, 5779 So too, Ayin Hara is identified as one of the worst character traits that a person should distance themselves from. Elsewhere, the Mishnah connects Ayin Hara and Yetzer Hara as two forces which drive a person from this world. These two forces of Ayin Hara and Yetzer Hara are contrasted in this interesting account of the rabbis who sat outside the mikvah. Our Yochanan wanted the women to look at him immediately after he left the mikvah, since he was very good-looking. She questioned about how that did not attract Ayin Hara. He responded that he was from the tribe of Yosef, which is not affected by the Ayin Hara. And Kazel brings various proof texts from the Barakat of Yosef to prove this. Alternatively, it is a corollary of his control of Yetzer Hara with Potiphar's wife. The Shulchan Aruch rules that a woman should be careful not to see anything negative on first emerging from the mikvah, and should ideally repeat the tevila if that happened. And then Kazel understood that certain traders would not see success from their business, and particularly those who trade in products that are very numerous or visible, since they will attract Ayin Hara. Kazel understood that Barakah will only rest on something which is hidden from the eye. The consequences of Ayin Hara are seen as deadly serious. Rav said that 99 out of 100 deaths were attributed to it. Rav ruled that a person should not stand in a neighbor's field when the crops are high. The Rambam and others understand that this is a form of hezek reya, damage to other people's property caused by looking over it. One of his explanations is that this is due to Ayin Hara. If a person was looking after a lost garment, it may not be spread out over a bed in front of guests. The Gemara gives two reasons. It may get stolen, or it may be damaged by the Ayin Hara from the eyes of the guests. And Ayin Hara as damage caused by ocular radiation. Emission theory, or extra-emission theory, is the proposal that visual perception is accomplished by eye beams emitted by the eyes. This theory has been replaced by intromission theory, which states that visual perception comes from something representative of the object, later established to be rays of light reflected from it entering the eyes. In the 5th century BCE, Empedocles postulated that everything was composed of 4 elements: the fire, air, earth, and water. He believed that Aphrodite made the human eye out of the 4 elements, and that she lit the fire in the eye, which shone out from the eye, making sight possible. If this were true, then one would see during the night just as well as during the day. So Empedocles postulated an interaction between rays from the eyes and rays from a source such as the sun. Around 400 BCE, emission theory was held by Plato. Around 300 BCE, Euclid wrote Optica, in which he studied the properties of light. Euclid postulated that light traveled in straight lines and described the laws of reflection and studied them mathematically. He questioned that sight is the result of a beam from the eye, for he asked how one sees the stars immediately if one closes one's eyes, then opens them at night. Ptolemy, 2nd century, wrote about the refraction of light and developed a theory of vision that objects are seen by rays of light emanating from the eyes. And Galen, also in the 2nd century, likewise endorsed the extra-emission theory. Due to his medical authority, his view held considerable influence in Europe for much of the following 1,000 years.